everybody. Welcome to Strait Science. So Strait Science is a evening presentation series put on by UAF Northwest Campus in Nome and also UAF Alaska Sea Grant. And my name's Gay Sheffield and you're in the home office tonight. So UAF Northwest Campus and UAF Alaska Sea Grant, we serve the Bering Strait region, which is the homeland and waters of the Yupik, Inupiaq, and St. Lawrence Island Yupik peoples. And tonight, we have a very interesting presentation. It's going to be in a panel format. So we have Lieutenant Colonel Eric Marcellus. He is going to be the lead and the lead off, and then we'll have a panel of three other individuals who will be introducing themselves after I hand it off. So I didn't ask, do you want questions at the very end, or do you want people to stop and things and ask questions along the way? Or do you want to wait till the very end?
We can take questions along the way. You'll just have to monitor that via the chat, or I don't know if they have the hand raising feature here in Zoom, and let me know to stop talking. Otherwise, I might just keep going.
Keep going until I can, that's what I'll be looking out for. So no problem there. All right, so Lieutenant Colonel Captain Marcellus, he will be the commander of the Joint Task Force that is coming to Nome for this exercise. And currently he serves as the Construction and Facility Maintenance Officer full-time for the Alaska Army National Guard. And the biography that they sent for Lieutenant Colonel Marcellus is pretty impressive, but it's very long. So I just thought I would read off the decorations and badges, and you can fill in the 26 years of experience he has just by these. His decorations include the Meritus Service Medal, the Army Commendation Medal, it says 5 times, the Army Achievement Medal, the National Defense Service Medal, Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal, Kosovo Campaign Medal, Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, Armed Forces Service Medal, Armed Forces Reserve Medal with M device, Bronze Hourglass, ABN1, Army Service Ribbon, Overseas Service Ribbon twice, Army Reserve Components Overseas Training Ribbon, NATO Medal, Yugoslavia, NATO Non-Article 5 Medal, German Gaffet, and Aviator Wings. And I asked, he is a pilot, so he flies the big UH-60s. He holds a professional engineering license, a Master of Science in Engineering Management from Missouri University of Science and Technology, a Master's of Arts in Procurement and Acquisitions Management from Webster University, a graduate certificate in government contracting from Webster University, and he has had civilian engineering positions with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the FAA. He is married and has 2 children, and I think we will be in very good hands with Lieutenant Colonel Marcellus as he leads this expedition, or I guess this exercise to Nome. I know we're all really curious to learn more about it, and with that, take it away, sir. Thank you for coming.
All right, thanks, Kay. I appreciate the introduction. I am Lieutenant Colonel Eric Marcellus, and it's my pleasure to come to you guys and talk a little bit about the Artic Eagle, Arctic Patriot 2022 exercise that's going to be done really all over Alaska, but specifically for you guys, you're most interested in the portion that we'll be doing there in Nome. It's interesting, we were doing a rehearsal yesterday with Gay, and she was telling me about the CH-47 that she saw flying around up there in Nome. And I was commenting to her that, yeah, we had Station 1 up there as part of Operation Santa, and they were probably just flying it back because really all the maintenance and everything on those takes place down here at Joint Base Homendorf-Richardson at our main aviation facility called Bryan Army Airfield.
That's the Chinook.
And she was saying that it, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying you said the name of the helicopter by its real name, and we would sort of, people saw such a large helicopter and we're calling it a Chinook. So thank you.
Yep. The Chinook is a CH-47. The Army names their helicopters after native tribes. So my helicopter that I flew when I was still flying was the UH-60 Sikorsky Blackhawk. And of course, I'm partial to that, but the Chinooks are nice helicopters with a lot of capabilities. So I was just thinking back though, the last time I was in Nome, Gabe was saying how the Chinook was flying right over the kind of downtown Nome, right along the coast there. And I can remember one of my first flights when I got out of flight school, Chief Benish, who was an old warrant officer from Vietnam at the time, who was in the Alaska Army National Guard, took me up there and we were doing some training missions. And he said, "Yep, when you come to Nome, you got to fly over the town and let them know that the Guard's here." So I'm here to let you know that the Guard is here, and we'll be up there in Nome for this Artic Eagle exercise in the February-March timeframe. Next slide. All right, so hopefully you're looking at a slide that is telling you who the speakers are. Gay did a wonderful introduction on myself, but we also have some panel members who are going to help answer questions later on in the presentation. Unfortunately, Colonel Harper, who's the director of the Joint Staff, is not here right now. We got a lot of natural disaster type of state missions that the Alaska National Guard is conducting. As a matter of fact, I just got named as the Joint Task Force Commander for Yakutat. So I'm trying to do double duty this evening and get ready for that. Fly out tomorrow along with some Air National Guard and Army National Guard personnel to go down to Yakutat and help out with the large amount of snow that they got there in that town, do some engineering stuff for them and structural assessments. And then our National Guard personnel are going to help get snow off the roof and try and prevent some buildings from potentially collapsing. But we've also had a lot of wind events in South Central, and then we had some big cold weather events up in Fairbanks. So the National Guard is out and about and trying to help the citizens of the state of Alaska. So that's what Colonel Harper's doing this evening. We do have Lieutenant Colonel Koontz with us, and I'm going to let him go ahead and introduce himself and tell you a little bit about what he does in the National Guard.
All right, good evening. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Steve Koontz. I work full-time for the Alaska National Guard as the Deputy Director for Training and Exercises at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson. I live in Wasilla. I've also lived in Juneau, and I have been in active duty and the National Guard for 20 years. So I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, we also have Captain Eric Olson, who's an Air National Guard. And if you can introduce yourself and tell the Nome people a little bit about what you do.
Hopefully my video is working. Can you guys see me?
I can see you.
Yes, we can.
Okay. I'm Captain Eric Olson. I work at the Alaska Air National Guard based out of Eielson. I've been in for 12 years. I oversee personnel and services, and our main focus in Nome is going to be the services operations. And I think we're going to get more in depth as we go on with that presentation of what that looks like. So thanks for having me.
All right, thanks. And then our last panel member is Azira Mohammadi. She works in the TAGS office, which is under the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. The Alaska Army National Guard and the Alaska Air National Guard both fall under that State Department. The commissioner is our TAG, a 2-star general. And Azira, can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Good evening. My name is Azara Mohammadi. My mother is from Issaquah, Washington, and my father is from Tehran, Iran. I was born in Fairbanks, Alaska. I also lived in Valdez, Bethel, and then Anchorage. I moved to Anchorage for this position as the relatively new tribal liaison. And as they were explaining, the TAG, which stands for the Adjutant General, who oversees the Air, the Army, and the Joint Forces National Guard in 6 states. That tag is also the commissioner, a state commissioner, so both federal and state. So our tag, General Sachs, is also the commissioner for the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs, which includes the State Emergency Operations Center. And I'd be more than happy. I enjoy coming out to communities to explain how those two things go together. It can be a little bit complicated sometimes, but I'm always available to help.
All right, next slide. So this is just a little idea about what the Arctic Eagle, Arctic Patriot exercise is. And you can see that the key takeaways there, but the Arctic Eagle provides an opportunity for the National Guard states to participate in high-level training opportunities that generate combat readiness and the ability to operate in extreme cold weather environments. So obviously Alaska has got the most extreme cold weather environment of all the states, and as a result, we get a lot of states that want to come up here and participate in exercises with us. We also get a lot of federal entities and active duty military personnel that want to do the same. And this exercise is one of those big opportunities. Arctic Eagle 22, the intent is to explore the Arctic capabilities and the restrictions in the context of domain integration. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into it. But you can see by the scope that there's going to be a lot of people involved in this. Now remember that Nome is just a portion of the exercise. That's the portion that we'll talk mostly about tonight, because that's the portion that you're probably most interested in. But realize that Arctic Eagle is happening all over the state of Alaska during this time period. Approximately 600 Air and Army National Guard forces from 28 states, 300 federal participants from 25 agencies, including DoD, FEMA, and NOAA, as well as 6 state participants, including AST and DHSS, as well as 13 local agencies and 3 Canadian agencies make up this exercise. So it's joint in nature, which means there's more than one service, military service that's participating, Air Force and Army. And it's also multi-agency in nature, as you can see by both federal and state agencies and even the local entities. Next slide. So in the military, you'll hear us use the term mission, and mission is pretty important because it tells us what we're supposed to do. And it's that mission that we will use to accomplish the tasks. When we're given the mission, then we're allowed to use our own initiative at different command levels to ensure that it is completed. The mission for this exercise, as we've kind of talked about, is to operate within the Arctic environment and try and unify civil and military capabilities. So we've also got a portion of the mission that's going to address a peer adversary, and that's part of the scenario that we are operating under, just to exercise some of the other capabilities within the different agencies and military entities that are doing this exercise. We talked about the scope already. Specific to the Nome portion, we have about 250 military and civilian personnel, and they won't all be here at the same time. So approximately 150 personnel will be on the ground at any given time. So some people will be coming in, some people will be going out. On average, probably about 150 people on the ground in Nome throughout the duration of this exercise. You can see the areas that we'll be operating at. If you're familiar with Nome, then you probably know where the Army Aviation Operations Facility is, there on the Nome Airport. I spent some time in that facility back in my flying days. And we also have the Army National Guard Armory. Sometimes you refer to that as the Readiness Center. That's the technical term that NGB would refer to it as. But then we're also operating within the community at the Rec Center with the Norton Sound Health Corporation, Port of Nome, Public Safety Building, which is actually where I'll be as the Joint Task Force Commander. We're setting up there to run the command and control portion of the exercise. And then NACTEC is graciously going to provide us with some facilities to sleep in, and personnel will be staged and running the exercise scenarios and be lodging in these locations throughout the exercise. Next slide. So we talked a little bit about all the different agencies and entities and other military components that are going to be involved in this. I had mentioned that we had a lot of states that like to come to Alaska to do exercises. You can see that Colorado, Kentucky, and North Dakota will be involved in sending different units from their state National Guards up here to participate in the exercise. We got the active duty guys involved. And of course, we have your Alaska Air and your Alaska Army National Guard personnel involved, and they'll be doing a lot of the command and control stuff in the C2 node that I'll be responsible for. Next slide. So here are some of the missions that we'll be conducting there in Nome. We have the overall mission for the exercise that I read off earlier, but then there are like sub-missions within this exercise, and everybody's got, all the participants want to get a little something out of the exercise that will help them in their tasks that they're supposed to be training on. So we have the C2, as I mentioned earlier, that's 30th Troop Command. It's of which I am the executive officer for. That's my, what they would call my M-Day position within the Army National Guard. And then that C2 cell is also going to be augmented by members from the 168th Wing. And we'll be leading the overall synchronization of events there in Nome. It's kind of like herding cats. The aerial port opening, Kentucky National Guard will provide all the capabilities Air Force aircraft need to operate, much like they did in Puerto Rico. They will unload and offload equipment, inspect, refuel, weather, secure the site, and do things as needed there at the port. For domain awareness, the Alaska State Defense Force, sometimes we'll refer to them as ASDF, as well as some special forces personnel will be familiarizing themselves with the area and identifying critical infrastructure. For DOM Ops, that's Domestic Operations Security. DOM Ops is that acronym we use for that. Of course, the Army loves, and the Air Force really love its acronyms, but DOM Ops Security, that's the Alaska Air Guardsmen from Clear and Nielsen will simulate security operations for things like the hospital and the recruiting event. High altitude communications, the Kentucky, North Dakota National Guards, as well as the ASDF and the Alaska Air National Guard will work to have interoperability as well as external communications. One of my previous jobs was as a civilian engineer working at the U.S. Army Cold Regions Test Center. That's a facility that's a part of Army Test and Evaluation Command. That's at Fort Greely. It's really on the Donnelly training area side of Fort Greely. And as a test engineer there, I ran a lot of tests on stuff. And one of the unique things about Alaska is not only is it cold, but we're also high latitude. And that causes problems with things. That causes problems with line of sight, that causes problems with satellites, GPS systems, and things like that. So that's one of the things that they'll be testing while they're up here in Nome, because Nome's pretty high latitude, especially as far as the rest of the lower 48 is concerned. Hazmat testing and ID, so North Dakota National Guard participate in that. Also USARAC. USARAC is U.S. Army Alaska, that's the active duty guys. Of course, most of the active duty guys are either stationed at Fort Richardson on J-Bear or up at Fort Wainwright. But they'll be participating in this event and exercise their TTPs, that's techniques, tactics, and procedures, another Army acronym there. And they'll be doing that in the area of the Port of Nome, and they're going to be doing test equipment capabilities in the extreme cold weather conditions. Medical is also going to be doing some testing up here. There's a new medical tent that procurement has come up with, and they're incorporating Alaska Department of Homeland Security. And part of the scenario they'll run there is a burn medevac plan. Food service and lodging. So the Alaska Air Guard from Eielson will take care of all the people coming to Nome. They're going to have their own containerized kitchen. It's good training for them, and it beats eating MREs. So I'm happy that they'll be here to provide us some hot food. Land navigation. Again, we have active duty participating in that, as well as the Kentucky National Guard. They'll have an opportunity to exercise a traditional skill in a unique and remote area. So we've kind of gotten spoiled over the years with GPS and all navigation at our fingertips on our phones. It's always good to go back to the old compass and map, because you never know when we might lose those satellites and have to do it the old-fashioned way. Arctic survival. So we'll all be getting some training on that and experiencing the tent and setups and stuff that a lot of Alaskans are probably used to anyway. But again, we got a lot of people coming up from the lower 48, so they'll get their taste of the Arctic. And we'll see how cold it is there in February and March for them. New and emerging technologies, there's a couple in the notes. Mostly that deals with the medical side of things, but there could be some other R&D type stuff that they're testing up here as well. Next slide. All right, our engagements. So these are the scheduled opportunities for exercise leadership, to include myself and participants to interact with the local community and leadership. Each event has a POC working with local counterparts to finalize the details on this. Rural operations is an initiative that our Adjutant General, the TAG, puts a priority on. That's one of the reasons why the Air Guard and the Army Guard are participating in this and going out to the different sites associated with Artic Eagle, is so that we can do these key leader engagements and get out there and let people know that their Alaska National Guard is doing stuff and is prepared to help them out if the need arises. The other thing I'd say about this is we're doing some routine meetings and discussions with the city manager. I was up there for a site visit in December and met with them, also the local emergency preparedness committee and the Chamber of Commerce. The intent of these discussions is to better understand the needs and concerns of the people of Nome and to discuss ways in which the National Guard can support Nome during contingency operations. We have the recruiting event. So Army had a recruiter there at the Nome Armory for quite a while, but the Alaska Army National Guard has the recruiting battalion, which is 05 Command, and they go throughout the state participating in events. They've been up in Nome before. You'll see them for the Iditarod and Iron Dog and basketball tournaments and stuff like that. But they're going to do what they call Burger Burn. They're the 27th, 28th of February, and swing on by and get yourself a hamburger. The TED Talks initiative, these are a panel of experts that will be giving talks on a particular subject matter over the course of the exercise there in Nome. We're working the exact times and locations, but these are the kind of subject areas that they'll be covering: human factors, medical professionals, cybersecurity, IT, public affairs, things of that nature. And then we're also going to have a Distinguished Visitors Day. It's scheduled for the 2nd of March. And we'll have some VIPs up here. And that means that I got to give a lot of briefings to people. But it's good to get senior leadership up here and out there, out to these more remote sites, and see what the good things that the troops and that the airmen and that the civilians and civilian agencies are doing. So it's always good to get people recognition for the great things that are happening. Next slide. All right, so we've come to the question and answer portion of the presentation. And what we'll do now is we'll let Gabe kind of moderate this, and you guys can direct your questions to me or to any of the other panel members, or we got some other people that are on the line who, depending on the question, will be able to try and get you a good answer.
All right, well, thank you, Captain Marcellus, and we appreciate that. I know I've got a lot of questions, but I'm sure other people do, so I'm going to hold until other people have a chance. First off, make sure that it's not easy to be a straight science speaker, even if you're a lieutenant colonel. You have to get up and talk, so feel free to put in comments on the chat. And if you have questions and you're too shy to speak up, then you can go down to the bottom or the top, wherever the toolbar is for you, and hit the chat button, which looks like a little cartoon talking chat and says chat. Hit that, and it's like you can type your question in. With that, any questions right off the bat for Lieutenant Colonel Marcellus regarding Artic Eagle 22, soon to come to us? That mean I get to ask?
I, of course, have a host of questions that I'd love to ask, but don't want to, but because I love doing this, but also don't want to take time away from anyone. So maybe I'll do one, and then someone else can do one.
There you go.
And
All
we can
right.
just keep cycling back.
Spin it up. Go for it.
Lieutenant Colonel, thanks so much for a relatively in-depth description.
Yeah.
For a military reporter, I know what a lot of this means. How would you describe to an average resident of Nome how their days will be any different during this period? What should someone who lives here expect to see?
Well, I mean, Nome isn't that big a place, so you're going to see a lot more people, for one thing. And there'll be people running around in uniform for another. So we'll have both military and civilians running around. We'll be patronizing, your stores, and we'll be out and about in the community. Some of the exercises will be happening really right there in the town area. So you might see them setting up the JISC, which is a big satellite communications array there around the police station. And they'll be doing stuff like I had mentioned before, doing the high latitude tests, doing the communications tests. So you'll see some equipment up here as well, some military grade equipment. And Nome is used to having periods where you're pretty busy. I mean, it gets busy there in Nome during the Iditarod and stuff like that. So I don't think that'll be something that you're not used to, or that'll surprise you, but there will be quite a bit of activity going on.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Peter, and thanks, Lieutenant Colonel Marcellus. Addie, I see you have your hand up. Please go ahead.
So I'm going to keep my camera off because I have bad internet connection on my phone. But my name is Addie Amasuk. I am a lifetime resident of Nome. I am Inupiaq and Yupik, and my roots have come from this region, going back many, many generations. And my dad here is on the call as well, and I'm sure he's going to have some comments as well. But I have quite a bit of concern with this, and I thank you very much for your presentation and giving us a good overview of this project. But I want to just recognize two things that are definite truths here for me as an Indigenous person to these lands. And the first one is that our people, our tribal governments, have a federal trust relationship with the federal government, and that relationship is not recognized at the state level. So I wanted to recognize the complexity that the kind of relationship that we're working with when it comes to federal or state entities coming onto our tribal lands. And number two, within the rights of the United Nations rights for the rights of Indigenous peoples, the UNDRIP, we have a right to demilitarization, to have peaceful lands as Indigenous peoples to the world. So I just want to recognize those two truths before I bring up my concerns. But the first one is, you mentioned that you had met with the City of Nome, the Nome Chamber of Commerce, and then I believe it was the emergency response team, but there was no mention of meeting with the tribes that are currently here, not with COERC, the tribal consortium, or the 4 tribes that are housed here in Nome. And I would like to address about maybe why we weren't, or why our tribal members and our tribal nations weren't recognized as a collaborative partner in this, because this is tribal lands. And number two is we're in the middle of a global pandemic, and you're bringing in hundreds of people during, and you mentioned it's during a dinner time, and for us that's a really happy time to come together as a community, to be able to have community events. And this pandemic has hindered those events for the last 2 years because of the high numbers of COVID in Nome specifically. So we haven't been able to house those events like we normally would. And you mentioned that there's more people here anyways, but this one would bring in more people. So I just wanted to bring up those two concerns of maybe my question of why wasn't there consultation with the tribes, and then just recognize that we're in the middle of a global pandemic, and I have concern about that.
All right, thank you for your question, Addie. The Alaska National Guard and the federal government does recognize the government-to-government relationship that exists between the Native peoples and the United States government. And because a lot of our money is federal, I end up having to deal with that a lot in the facility side of things. In fact, the National Guard Bureau has given me a cultural resource manager, one of whose major responsibilities within the Construction Facilities Management Office tasks is to coordinate with the tribal entities, and specifically as we are doing construction and things of that nature. And we did also bring Azar Mohammadi on with us as well. So not only do I have a cultural resources individual within the Alaska Army National Guard Construction Facilities Management Office, but we also have one at the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs level. And I think that I'll let her talk a little bit more about that.
Thank you, and thank you for that question. I think I could have done a better job introducing my role, which is relatively new. We used to have what was called a cultural resource manager, and I really appreciate that there was recognition for a need to split that task into what they call a tribal liaison, as well as a cultural resource manager. So the cultural resource manager has gone to focusing on the physical aspect of compliance, with tribes, and I am now here to engage more with the tribes in a responsible way and be prepared for consultation if necessary. I will be reaching out to the tribes prior to this operation. I'm relatively new to this role and have not been engaged in this operation while this is my first experience with the military. So I've been learning about the military side of things. I'm more familiar with governance structures in rural Alaska. So I will be reaching out to the tribes. And you are right, although the state does not recognize tribes in Alaska, the federal government most certainly does. And I'm very, very happy that they've created my position as a permanent position. I think that shows great recognition that relationships need to be long-term and lasting. Because as you know, in the military, people shift out every 3 years, much like our state and federal government. So I will be here as the next tag comes in and as the next governor comes in, as governors are the ones who appoint the tags. Yeah, I hope that answered your question, even if it wasn't a satisfactory answer. And if I did not, please let me know. I think Lieutenant Colonel Marsalis can address the COVID concerns more.
Yeah, as far as it goes concerning COVID, I can tell you that the military takes COVID pretty serious. Federal government under this administration is certainly applying a lot of mandates and rules and regulations that we are following in the military and as a part of the DoD. And so we're going to make sure that when we come into your community, that we're doing the proper mitigation measures we need to make sure that we're not going to spread COVID or put your community at risk. There is always the possibility that this exercise could be canceled because of COVID. So that's how seriously the exercise planners are taking it. It's not a given that this exercise will happen, and if the COVID situation dictates it, then it is potential that the exercise could get canceled before that. So I think that the exercise planners, as well as the military and other agencies, both federal and state that are involved, recognize that as a concern for the community, and we're going to do our part to make sure that both the military members and the people who are involved in the exercise are safe, but as well as the community. Amy, are you on? You want to talk any more about that?
Yes, sir. Hi, this is Amy Schwalber. I'm the exercise planner for the Alaska National Guard. One of the main things that we're doing is every single person coming into Nome will test within 72 hours prior to arriving into Nome. So we have implemented that on all of our personnel going up there. Additionally, everybody will be wearing masks when they're out amongst the public. And the majority of the members will be vaccinated through the military side. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Amy.
All right. Thank you for that. Addie, thanks for the thumbs up. And Austin, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead. And good to see you. I haven't seen you for a while.
Yeah, thank you. My connectivity is bad. I'm east of Nome, like 4.5 miles, so I apologize. Lieutenant Commander, you first started off by talking about the helicopters buzzing Nome. You know, the people of Nome, we don't like those helicopters buzzing us. They're disruptive. They're loud. They shatter they shutter our houses. We don't care for them, and it's always a nuisance to hear those darn things. I'm very concerned about the militarization of the Arctic. I'm very concerned about the community being militarized, and I'm wondering how in the heck the Alaska National Guard is even here. You know, you mentioned that the possibility that this exercise can be canceled. What about the possibility of this exercise shouldn't be canceled because it should be canceled because it's right to do so? We don't need to inflame tensions internationally. That's one thing that we don't absolutely need to do. We're at peace with Russia. We're at peace with China. Why are you here? I don't think that people really want the military here doing these things here that are causing a show of force. You know, we in the Arctic, we want peace. That's what we want. We don't need flexing muscle over across the strait there.
Do you have a question, Austin, or?
Well, my question is, can it be canceled because it's the right thing to do?
Okay.
We don't need to have an exercise here. The military already knows what to do up here. They have all the assets, they have all the resources, they already know what to do. Why do they need to exercise in a community that is presently at peace? This, you know, the National Guard talked about meeting with the city manager. The city manager is not from Nome at all. He's a new transplant. He doesn't know the community like I do. I was born here in 1972. I've been here longer than anybody on this call here in Nome. We don't need the military here.
But
Okay,
Dave,
Austin,
if I-
well, thanks for your question. As an American, I appreciate the opinion that you have, and when I took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States, it was to defend your right to have that opinion. And all I can really say is that the military recognizes the significance of the Arctic, and in that way, the military recognizes that it's a significant resource. It's a significant part of the nation, the both economic and national security strategy. You've seen a lot of Arctic symposiums. So whenever you have a geographical site like that is important, then as part of the national security strategy, they're going to want to be able to potentially protect it and keep it safe. I mean, Alaska was invaded by another force once upon a time during World War II. And during the Cold War, the Alaska Territorial Guard played a significant role in restraining the Soviet Union. And many people there in Nome indeed were part of that Alaska Territorial Guard and then went on to serve in the Alaska National Guard. All I can say is that the Adjutant General for the state of Alaska recognizes the importance of Nome in the Arctic. At the federal level, they recognize the importance of Nome in the Arctic as well. And that's why they're doing this exercise here. I don't think it's us puffing our chest out or flexing our muscles. A lot of it is training. A lot of it is so that our forces can get used to dealing in an Arctic environment. It's if somebody hasn't lived in the Arctic like you have all your life since 1972, they probably don't know how to deal with it. And even just a regular Alaskan is more capable in operating in an Arctic environment, cold weather environment in the snow than many people in the lower 48. So I think that there is a valid reason for entities and agencies to want to operate in this area, and that we just want to do so with respect to both the individuals that live here full time, and I think that we can strike that balance.
Any other question, Austin? I have one to follow up on that. If are you done, Austin, for right this sec? Okay. So for me, I'm more familiar with the marine environment. Now I don't know the land, and I don't know the Army and all that, but One thing Austin's question makes me think of is, you know, we share this border, and it's pretty tricky with the marine environment because it's like, you know, it's right there. It's the border. And I'm sure people on that side, like we do, keep track of all these helicopters and planes. And, you know, I think if we try to do surveys at sea, we have to get permission down in Anchorage or let Elmendorf know, so that the algorithm of seeing a plane not on the regular flight path, you know, minding the rules, but chasing an animal, maybe at sea, or going to an area that's not normally flown to look for something. You know, you have to watch for that. Does that, and I'm just dumber than a box of rocks on this, but does all these helicopters and whatever you're doing, does the Alaska Army National Guard have like a transboundary comms, sort of like the Coast Guard does? I'm more familiar with the Coast Guard. Do they have something where you're doing something in the region and it's not going to set off any kind of, I don't know, do you coordinate with the Coast Guard so they can call or over and say, hey, we're just drilling around? Because we've been seeing on their side at sea, they've been doing drills. The Russians have. We had a gunnery exercise this July, not a joint exercise, a gunnery exercise by the Russians within 10 miles of a community, so of an American community. So is there anyone telling them what's going on in the neighborhood? And I say that because I don't know anything how it works on land, but at sea you would probably notify each other.
Well, the Alaska Army National Guard does deal with the Coast Guard quite a bit, actually. And I can tell you, having dealt with the Coast Guard, because they like to use Alaska Army National Guard facilities, to include that facility there in Nome, the AAOF,
That's
the Coast Guard
hangar?
is, yeah, I'm sorry,
Okay.
the aviation facility there at the Nome Airport.
Okay, thank you.
The Coast Guard is wanting to use our facilities because our facilities are available, and there's not a lot of facilities in the Arctic region, and they want to have more of a presence in the Arctic. And so right now we have a lease agreement with them for our facility in Kotzebue, where they do station 2 Coast Guard helicopters there. And those Coast Guard helicopters are there for presence in the Arctic, and also to do search and rescue missions in the Arctic. And frankly, right now you guys don't have a Black Hawk station there in Nome, because the pilots of that Black Hawk and the full-time personnel that normally reside at the facility there at the airport are deployed right now. So they're doing their federal mission. They got deployed overseas, and so we don't have the manning to keep a helicopter here. But when they do have a helicopter here, and when they do have the manning, those military personnel are quite involved in rescue operations, and they serve the community by having that capability. A UH-60 Black Hawk is a pretty good capability. It's got the power, it's got the lift, it's got the ability to carry the weight that a lot of the civilian helicopters don't. And so by having that military presence there, I think that's a benefit to the community. And I know that inside of that facility, they have like a wall there where they list the little rescue awards that they've received from saving this person from a hunting accident, or that person who was stranded in the weather, or this or that. I've seen it there because I've been in the facility, and I hear about it too because I see the reports come through the state aviation office while I'm down here at JBER. So like I said, the Arctic is important. The federal government recognizes it, the state of Alaska recognizes it, and we're trying to provide facilities and resources to help support the communities up there.
And that's all good. I just meant for this exercise that you're doing in February and March, there's going to be more, I would assume, more aircraft coming, C-130 or your big helicopters or more Blackhawks or something. I don't know, but I would assume you're doing stuff with equipment. That may set a Chukotka Border Patrol may be pretty interested in that. And I was just wondering if you're partnering with the Coast Guard, because they have a way to communicate to the Border Patrol immediately. Transboundary. I think Austin was sort of trying to, you know, I was hearing his words and it sort of made me think, well, gosh, yeah, I didn't even think of that before. But if we have all these aircraft in the area, will Chukotka, which is very close, you know, will they be wondering, their FSB, will they be wondering, which is like KGB, will they be wondering, gosh, what's going on over here? Should we be worried about that? And my thought was, well, you would probably partner with the Coast Guard, or I didn't know, maybe the National Guard has a Russian international person that can answer questions. But I know the Coast Guard does, and they can just call over and say, you know, answer a question that the Border Patrol on the other side of the line might have. Is that? So I guess my question is, does the Alaska National Guard have a transboundary communication officer? And, or if not, are you guys working with the Coast Guard to make sure that nobody gets kind of nervous on Chukotka side?
Having been in the aviation unit, I can with some confidence say that we don't have any entity like that for the Alaska Army National Guard aviation and the flights that we take. I mean, we'll file with the FAA for flying instruments. We'll file flight plans with our flight operations facility when we're taking off doing logistics runs up to Nome or back. But as far as an entity to communicate with the Russians, we don't really have that. And Amy, I don't know if you can talk to about anything on the planner side for the exercise, whether some notices have been issued or anything regarding the exercise.
So this is an unclassified exercise, so there is no secrets that have been kept, and hence things like this meeting being advertised and such. Exercises happen with the National Guard and the active duty throughout Alaska pretty much routinely every month or so. And just like they do on their side, we watch, they watch, but it's not, these aren't aggressive acts that could be used to escalate anything.
Okay, well, I guess
yeah, and I kind of echo that with what Amy said. There is, we do a lot of exercises. I mean, I get to see all the different op orders that come through being down here at the Joint Forces headquarters, and there's exercises we're doing all over the state of Alaska, and it's just it's not something that's gonna trigger the Russians to say, hey, what are they doing? We do it all the time, and so they shouldn't be surprised.
Well, it's just that we've been seeing, just to add on to that, and I'll leave it be, is that at least, you know, the Coast Guard do have that capability if something were to, and the Bering Strait region, just in the last, since the pandemic, honestly, the amount of multinational military activities has grown exponentially in this region. So we are seeing things that are novel, or at least have been a long time since we've seen this level of aerial and marine activity in that regard. So so anyway, thank you. I see Peter, and you know what, Peter, I'm gonna circle back and let Charlie go first, because I know you had a question, and I know you'll have plenty of questions. So let's
Sounds
let
great.
Charlie.
Please do.
Okay, let's ask. Go ahead, Charlie. You have your hand up.
Yeah, I dropped in late on this, but I wanted to say that I have 32 years as an ambulance and EMT responder, and I've gone out on multiple medevacs with the Black Hawk to do remote rescues and so forth. And there's nothing like having some drills and having some some shared experiences to work as a team. I have done some rescues with the National Guard, and I do appreciate you guys. My hope is that during this exercise, I know there's roughly 200 people coming through, and perhaps maybe only 120 at a time here in Nome, but that's I think some of us that have been around could offer some insights and advice on how to cope with the Arctic. So I hope that you're amenable to talking with local people and having your different teams get with those of us that have had some experience. I'm a long-term resident of Nome. I think I'm right up there with Austin as far as the number of years spent in Nome. It's not always, the National Guard has not always been the savior, but you know, we all need to work together, and I think this is a real opportunity for us to try to get on the same page and work together. So thank you.
Yeah, I think that there'll be lots of opportunities, Charlie, during this exercise for the locals to interact with different military and civilian personnel that'll be up here for this exercise. I mean, I talked about those TED Talks, and so those will be, it's not going to be just one way. There'll be two-way communication, you know, similar to this, where you guys will have a chance to raise concerns and give pointers. Again, that's one of the reasons why a lot of these guys are coming up here to the Arctic environment, is to experience it and to see how it will affect the different tasks that they're required to do. So we recognize the abilities and the knowledge that the locals bring. I mean, that's only smart to do when you go somewhere, is find out what the locals think about something, because they know the terrain, they know the weather, they know the lay of the land better than anybody.
All right. I see there was a quick, hang on, Peter. There was a quick question in the chat box, and that is, I have a technical question. Is it planned to jam the GPS signal over the course of the exercise?
I'm pretty confident that I can say no to that. There would be a lot of people that'd be pretty upset if the GPS signal got jammed. So I can't think of any. I
would imagine so.
Any type of testing that would jam the civilian access to the GPS satellite system. If they were going to test that kind of stuff, they would do it in a way that would not interrupt your GPS signals. I mean, even just the nav aids for the FAA and stuff, a lot of them are running off GPS now too. So, you know, the GPS is inherently a military system. That's where it came from. That's one of the benefits of the R&D that the military provides, is a lot of that stuff eventually flows its way down into the civilian sector. GPS was originally developed for the military, but of course now we've all gotten used to using it and enjoy the perks of doing it. But no, I think that the GPS signal will be very safe during this exercise.
All right. And then Major Chelsea Aspelin, she put in the chat box, another means of information dissemination, I think this is to answer the previous question, is through our news and social media channels. Alaska National Guard will publish an overarching press release, which will go to our Coast Guard partners. As the public affairs officer for JTF Nome, you know what that acronym is? JTF? Joint Training?
Joint Task Force
Joint
Nome.
Task, okay. Joint Task Force Nome. I will send a specialized press release to the media entities in Nome. Additionally, the exercise will have a large social media presence with a social media team at JBear. In the past, our press releases and social media have been monitored by other nations with interest in the Arctic region. Joint Task Force. Okay, got it. Yeah, thank you. And so thank you for adding that. And then Peter, you've been very patient. I don't see you actually. But oh, there you are, but your hand is down.
I put it down out of respect.
Okay.
Two kind of follow-up questions. Amy, and I'm sorry if you have a title, you didn't introduce yourself as such. So if you have a rank, my apologies for calling you by your first name. You said the majority will be vaccinated. A simple majority is only 51%, and Nome, the city of Nome has 84% fully vaccinated. NSHC gave me that number last week for a COVID story, and the region as a whole is about 75%. Alaska was one of 6 states where the governor sent a formal letter to the Secretary of Defense saying we oppose the vaccine mandate for service members. I was wondering if you could be a little bit more specific about, do you know anything about the vaccination percentage of the people coming into our community? And I know that this has been quite a tricky topic inside, especially the National Guard. National Guard Bureau, I think the Air Force has somewhere in the 90s, but the National Guard Bureau compliance is quite low. Can you tell us if it's around the regional average of 75%? Is it approaching the 84% of Nome? Any more clarity into simply a majority? Because a majority at this point, if only 51% were vaccinated at this point in time, that would be.
Peter, I'm sorry, this is Amy. I understand your concern, and the reason I said it the way I said it is because I don't actually have the names yet of the personnel coming, so I don't have the actual numbers physically who are vaccinated. I will say, you know, certain organizations are 100% vaccinated. Others are approaching that. But because I don't know the specific names of who is coming, I don't have those numbers. I will get those, and we will know that going in, but we're, you know, still 5 weeks out, which names change pretty much daily at this point still with the exercise.
Sure. But to clarify, I know that there have been some debates as to, you know, if you are not fully vaccinated at a certain point, you will not be deployed. That has been a discussion. So that is not something in here. And I was actually going to tie this to another question about your engagement with the city manager, because he mentioned also something on city council recently about attendees getting a per diem to help spend money in local businesses. So I was going to ask what kind of engagement that will bring. Was there any ask from the city? All Iditarod participants have to be vaccinated. Was there any ask from the city as to mandate vaccines to participants?
Not specifically, no. They did ask for the testing prior to coming, because we do have folks coming from out of state. So obviously that there's a possible vector for that. We have been going on letting the states determine what's going on with their own response to the federal government's requirement, and we'll know eventually soon. I anticipate it'll be very high. I just don't know what it is, and so I didn't want to give you a number that's inaccurate.
Fully understood. Appreciate it. Thank you.
And you mentioned about the per diem. So and actually, Kat Molson, you probably are the better choice to answer on what the services we will be offering in the community, and then what won't be offered. So people will be going to the community to purchase things.
Yes, ma'am. Everything that we are going to be providing in Nome is actually going to be stuff that we purchased prior to with exercise money. So we'll show up with all of our food. We're not really planning on relying on the economy too much to purchase our food, because we know that resources are not, I mean, it's not like a Walmart where you pull up and you just grocery shop. So we're aware of just limited resources there. So we plan on fully stocking the kitchen that we bring. Unless there's a dire need, we're probably not going to be going to the grocery store there. So we'll be pretty self-sustaining when we show up.
And her folks will be feeding breakfast and lunch, so dinner will be on the economy. So expect that our folks will be, looking to get dinner from the different organizations, the businesses downtown. And I know the Chamber of Commerce was coming up with a list of the available restaurants and how to get them out to where all of the folks are staying.
Wonderful. I heard only, it wasn't clear if it was meal singular or meals plural. So dinner is on the local economy is great. Thank you for that clarification.
Yes, sir.
And how are the National Guard, how are you guys all doing? Because we have we've gone 10 minutes over, and but you're getting a steady stream of questions. Are you still game to hang on until the questions are over? Or?
I'm at your disposal.
Wow. Okay. Any other questions at this point? I have one, but I'm going to wait, see if anyone else raises a hand or jumps out or writes it in the chat box. Nothing. All right. So you had talked about, the history of the National Guard. And I know that a lot of our communities, Nome is the transportation hub for several communities, right? And communities that are on islands and all over the region. 15 communities, 20 tribes. So, including, and then there's Nome. The National Guard has been big in those communities. Will your exercise be engaging? Will you be bringing in people from the communities or going out to the communities? I would think that would, while you're doing this big thing. Is there any interaction with our neighbors?
I think most of the exercise will be in and around Nome.
Okay.
Amy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't. Yeah,
no, sir, we're staying in Nome. Most units will only have 2 or 3 days on the ground to do their objectives. So, going out further was just going to be a step too far. Additionally, we may or may not have any helicopter availability because the crews are still deployed. So, getting out to those smaller communities is a little more problematic in the winter that way.
Okay. And then my other question is, because of the again, I'm more maritime focused, but like I say, we've had a lot of aerial issues in the last few years, transboundary, and we've had certainly all manner of ship activity, new industries, large vessels, 1,000-foot tankers coming through the Strait in this time of year and still doing it, and freight and everything else. So everything's been really ramped up, I would say, on the border. And I guess my first thought when I heard when I heard the Alaska Air and Army National Guard are coming to Nome, right after all this sort of exciting stuff has happened in the region at sea, my question is, why now? Is it just that we're on the roster, or like, okay, go to Nome, or is it actually some sort of response to what we've been experiencing in the last 5 years? Both, and what we've been experiencing in the last 5 years starts off with the environment, which has rolled into changing our ecology, which is really pushing the at-sea industrial issues, which then seems to be pushing this multinational military increase. So why now? It fascinates me. I'm interested in this whole exercise. We see a lot more military. Is this exercise have anything to do with our activities, or is it just that it's our turn to house the national, to help you with your drill kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it was just on the schedule. Amy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but these type of exercises are planned well in advance.
Okay.
I can tell you from the Adjutant General's perspective, he has a rural engagement initiative, and so the Alaska National Guard is interested in not being the so-called Anchorage National Guard, but being the Alaska National Guard. And that means getting out into Alaska to include all the different remote communities. So on the Alaska Guard side, we want to take these opportunities to participate in these kind of exercises so we can get out into the communities and be known, because I think many people appreciate it when they can see the National Guard out there, and it's beneficial to for us to be familiar with different areas. Like I say, I just got tasked with a mission to go down to Yakutat tomorrow because of the extreme snows that have occurred there, and the National Guard gets called out to help the civilians when they request it to deal with these things. So it's important for us to get out into these rural communities so that if I did get called out, or if somebody else got called out to go help Nome out with a cold weather event, you guys lose power or something like that, that we're familiar with the area. And that's why the Alaska National Guard is participating.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks. We want you to be ready to help us for sure. Addie, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, if I just may just leave the space with one, maybe some kind of a comment, but also introduce from my perspective, just some kind of a, maybe not a suggestion, but just want to explain to you maybe the role, how an Indigenous person can experience this versus a non-Native person, because those are two very different things. And I work at a place where we host conversations on truth and racial healing. So this is something that I think is really important, especially as if an outsider is coming into our community. It's very important that they understand these things. And our Indigenous peoples here of Alaska and all across the United States have been colonized through forced assimilation and oftentimes methods of genocide. And this is not to say anything against the military or to call you out or any individuals here. I recognize this is truly a systemic and policy understanding that we as Indigenous peoples have kind of been at the brute end of the people that are being enforced to do things. And it's that military and colonization are of the same thread. So I just want you and your people that are coming into our community to recognize the state that our communities and our people are in, that we have been through an era of forced colonization. So when your people come here, you're going to see, you're gonna see maybe some victims of, or not victims, but our people are going through a lot of trauma, and we carry that as a community. So I want you to recognize coming in here into our community, and since I'm here to talk to you face to face in a way, to recognize that and to carry some respect when you come here, and to have some empathy for the people that have lived here on these lands during these decades of forced assimilation. And I just really want you to recognize and maybe think about as we go away and go about our evening, how militarization has played a part in this forced assimilation of our peoples. And none of this is to say that I blame you or anybody. It's not people, it's the policies in the system. But one way, and you mentioned you want to be able to work together, and I think that's great. It would be really amazing if there could be a collaboration between the Indigenous peoples of this nation and the military. Because when you mentioned, if we had to go back to when you come here to your training, you mentioned compasses and maps as being the old-fashioned way. But for us, we didn't have compasses and maps. We dug underneath the snow. We checked to see which way the grass was laying, and that told us the direction that we're headed, what direction we're in the middle of a storm. So that's our old-fashioned way. We have generations old ways of knowing and sciences that can inform how we respond in our communities, in our areas, because we've been here the longest. We know how to survive up here. So I really encourage you to get to know us, not just ask us questions or go through some kind of training about cultural sensitivity, but really know who we are, the people that have been here for thousands of years, so that we can actually have that relationship that you're talking about of collaboration. So I just want to thank you for your time. It is really meaningful that this space was put together for us to come forth and voice our concerns. I know it may seem really heated, but our homelands are our livelihood. It's not something that's just a desire to come and check out. This is where we are. This is of our body and our DNA. So I really want you to recognize that importance. And just again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Addie.
Really quickly, I just wanted to thank Addie for sharing that. Some things are easier to say than others, and that was very well put. Addie, if you don't mind, I'm going to send you my email address. I am in the process of putting together cultural awareness briefings, which is one of my favorite things to do, because I think that everyone coming into Alaska, including teachers and doctors, should have an awareness of what they're getting into so they can be set up for success and have good expectations and proper respect. I'm just going to send you my email address here. If you don't mind, I would really appreciate your participation in the development of our cultural awareness briefing.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Okay, I just sent that one.
Okay, I'll save it and I'll send you my email. That's actually where I work. That's what we do, is we help to create and deliver cultural sensitivity awareness.
And which organization was that?
Eric Wellness.
Oh, excellent. Okay, sounds great.
Yeah, we had actually worked with all of the justices in Alaska in delivering a cultural sensitivity training to them. Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to talking to you then, because one of the things that we're trying to implement internally is we have family readiness. I don't know if they're called officers, but they're, the support group for the service members and their families. And I think that we're trying to incorporate the Indigenous healing workshops or any information into there. So I'd really appreciate your help. I'm glad that we made this connection today.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Right. That was great. Glad you guys met. Any other questions for any of the people on the panel, especially Lieutenant Colonel Marcellus? And I really appreciate everybody's time. If there isn't any, and you can still, while I'm chatting away here, chat it in. Know that on Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, we're going to do Strait Science on a Wednesday, not a Thursday, because there's a Port Commission meeting on Thursday. But on Wednesday, the U.S. Coast Guard's going to also have a panel, and they are going to discuss what happened during Arctic 20. I think they had the Arctic, oh gosh, it's not called Artic Eagle. Okay. Arctic Shield. What happened in Arctic Shield 2021, especially the interactions with foreign vessels that occurred in the Bering Strait region and elsewhere. And they're going to give a look into Arctic Shield 22, what their plans are for next year. And also, they are going to bring some of the panel people will be their specialists for the border. So they're going to talk about the maritime boundary, and also look for, give and take, and maybe have us ask questions about the border that they may be able to answer and to sort of think about. So we're looking forward to that. That'll be at 6:30 on Wednesday, the 19th. And hopefully all the National Guard, you're feel free to join in. I can send the link and the poster to Amy Schwalber. Would that be the correct person?
Probably Chelsea Asplund would be the best.
Okay. And then this will be both, I think the Coast Guard person will be Captain Brunel. He's the head of law enforcement for District 17. And he'll be talking about the Arctic Shield and the border and the interactions with the other vessels that occurred. All right. Yes. Okay. And Peter, you have a question? And let me just check before you go, Peter, because I'm going to hold you up for 1 sec. There was a, oh, Major Chelsea. Major Chelsea, thank you. Major Chelsea wrote, thank you, Addie. This speaks to the heart of the key leadership engagements. These are designed to provide the face time you are speaking about to allow Alaska National Guard leadership to meet personally with the leadership in Nome to discuss concerns and to articulate the way forward for necessary partnerships, especially when we look at disaster response, emergency management, and search and rescue. So thank you for those words, Major Aspel. Thank you for that. With that, go ahead, Peter.
Just a quick follow-up, because you mentioned Arctic Shield, maybe Lieutenant Colonel or maybe to a planner. I know that there are other, ICE-X, I think is one, and I was just wondering if you could talk about how this overlaps with Arctic Shield and ICE-X, or complements, or kind of, from a more military journalist perspective, just kind of curious as to how you engage in those.
Peter, can you mention who does ICE-X? Whose
ICE-X,
exercise is that?
ICE-X is a Navy exercise.
Okay, thank you.
Also has not taken place for some years, has not taken place in the past also because of climate change. It is primarily a submarine exercise. And I believe the whole purpose of it is sub-ice exercises. And I was wondering if you in the Alaska National Guard have any engagement in that, or how all of these different trainings overlap. To someone who is not familiar with the military, it might sound like, well, why is the Coast Guard doing something and the Army doing something and the Air Force doing their own thing? To some, it might seem very siloed. And I'm wondering if you couldn't talk about why everyone does it differently.
Colonel Marsalis, I can answer this if you want me to.
But I can make a little bit of comment on that, and then I'll turn it over to Amy. This is just what I was referring to earlier in the presentation, where the Alaska Army National Guard is involved in all sorts of exercises throughout the state of Alaska, and Arctic Shield and ICE-X are two of them, and they do overlap. And you talked about silos within the different services. That's what these exercises are designed to alleviate. We want to stop silos from occurring, where one service branch is just doing its own thing and another service branch is doing its own thing. The whole concept of joint operations was developed to alleviate those silos. And this is a joint exercise, as I mentioned earlier, and that by doctrine, the term joint means that you have multiple services participating in the exercise. So specifically referring to ICE-X, from my aviation background, I can tell you Army National Guard Aviation participated in that exercise, and we send helicopters several hundred miles off the coast of northern Alaska to go link up with submarines out there and run exercises about downed aircraft and things of that nature. I know that we participate in Arctic Shield as well. So they do all overlap. They're all a part of the overall national security strategy, and Alaska National Guard is participating in them. Amy?
Thanks, Durin. Yes, we are participating even this year. Alaska Air National Guard, our pararescuemen will be working with the ICE-X participants up off the coast of Deadhorse. It's the ICE-X operates every other year, as does Artic Eagle, and you'll probably hear Arctic Edge, which is a Title 10 version. We're all kind of linked exercises. We participated with them in 2020 and 2018 as well, both Air and Army Guard. So they are linked, but you are right. The ICE-X exercise is about a submarine coming up under the ice, and there's not a whole lot of Air Force or Air National Guard aviation bits on that, except to support them on the rescue side. So there's reasons that some of these exercises diverge a little bit, but we do try to keep them kind of linked together so that we can learn and do better, as Colonel Marcellus said, rather than just operating those individual silos. Thank you.
Thank you. I learned something there. Peter, your hand is still up.
Sorry, that's by accident. I can ask
I
questions
just figured
forever, but
keep them going. But that I think that should be our wrap up, unless you have one burning question.
Absolutely, no, not at all. Just kind of
Okay.
personally, I look forward to engaging with all of you here. I was a military reporter before and have embedded on base in the past, so I look forward to getting as close as I can and
All right, well, let's
reporting
show up
back to the
Wednesday
people
night.
of Nome. I will do.
Wednesday, and give it to the Coast Guard too.
Thanks so much to everyone for coming.
Yeah, if we do try to put things in the chat, positive only really for the speakers. If they, you know, it's not easy to be a speaker, and certainly a lot of people gave us their time tonight to bring it to Nome. So I'm really thank KNOM and thank Nome Nugget for being here, because they'll distribute your message further throughout the region. So I learned a lot. I look forward when you guys come. So we'll see you. Did you say the 22nd of February? Is there someone we should be engaging with if we have ideas for sort of, and you know, I'm thinking off the top of my head, but at Northwest Campus, when Iditarod comes in, we do a series of talks to people who want to learn about whatever the Iditarod or about marine mammals or any of the that sort of thing. Are you guys organizing those? You said TED Talks. I don't know where those will be or whatever. Is that something, do you want to hear from people? And if people have something to say to the Coast Guard, say to the National Guard, where should they go? If they come up with an idea, or if they come up with, you know, they just want to say, hey, gee whiz, now that I've said Coast Guard, hey, National Guard, do you want to hear about this? Or, hey, National Guard, can you help us with that? Where do we take those?
Well, we
To the
will be
public
doing
safety
those.
building? Sorry.
We will be doing those TED Talks, and a lot of that is still in the coordination right now. So we will be posting where and when those things will be happening, and then you know, the public affairs guys are pretty good about getting that stuff out. I'm sure they'll potentially use you or other media outlets there in Nome to make sure that the community knows where these things are going to happen at. I just can't comment on them right now because they're not all finalized.
Okay, and if Nome wanted to tell your people things or offer to talk about, like Charlie had mentioned, you know, maybe he has information that might be helpful. Is there a way for the community to reach out or provide a presentation or provide something? Who would we, if we wanted to do something like that, if somebody like Charlie wanted to do that, or the local emergency people wanted to do something like that, who would they get in touch with to plan? Is that?
Amy, I hate to volunteer you here, but you are kind of the glue that holds this exercise together. I can tell you that Amy's the one who kind of initially coordinated this whole talk. So, Amy, do you have any suggestions for Gay?
Sure, that would be me. Yeah. Gay, I'm trying to get on the chat again, and somehow I minimized it and can't get on.
No, that's fine. It gets confusing, and it's been a long night.
But yes, so probably me for initial contact and setting up the additional things. And my email, I was again trying to put it on there, but I can't. But it's long.
I know it.
Okay.
So I can do that.
So if you could get it out, that would be great. Yeah, and that then I can at least point him in the right direction. I will actually not physically be in Nome, unfortunately, during the exercise. Colonel Marsalis will be running everything for me. I'll be managing the overall exercise down in Anchorage during that time frame. But I will be missing you because I wanted to come. But
and then Major Chelsea Asplin put in the chat. She said, "Thank you all. Please take down my information if you have any further questions about the Nome portion of the exercise." And she gives her email address there, which people can grab.
And I'm not sure if you can hear me. This is Major.
Yes, we can.
Hi. I will be taking over a lot of the media interface and sending out press releases, as well as any social media. So any of those questions as far as what's happening with the venues, once we have information solidified on locations and events, I will be sending those out to all the local media entities in Nome. And then we'll also work closely with Chamber of Commerce. as a good conduit for information.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you all of the National Guard. Well, thank you for the audience and for coming and spending some time with us. And thank you especially for the National Guard and for, I don't see it, Azra as a civilian, Azara, sorry for that pronunciation, for spending time with us and answering all our questions and telling us what to expect. We will be looking forward to, and it'll make sense why we have more of these planes and people walking around in uniform and on the 22nd of February. So welcome to Nome.
We appreciate the opportunity and the hospitality.
All right, with that, thank you all for coming.